Let's have a big hand for the Yardbirds, please. And Smokestack Lightning.
Formed in 1963, the Yardbirds were devoted to the blues and were part of a young, hip R&B cult scene in England, which survived on imported American albums for inspiration. With the success of the Rolling Stones, R&B was starting to take off in a big way. The Stones had been the resident band at the legendary Crawdaddy Club in Richmond when their first single, Come On, hit the charts, launching them on a nationwide tour. This left a vacancy at the club, which the newly formed Yardbirds were more than happy to fill.
Honey in your hips.
With the recording of For Your Love, Eric Clapton became disenchanted with the group's commercial direction and left the band. The Yardbirds found a formidable replacement for Clapton in Jeff Beck, who had an affinity for jazz and rockabilly as well as for the blues. Embarking on their first US tour, the Yardbirds took their American sound back to its roots and became an inspiration to garage rock subculture and a prototype of late 60s psychedelia.
Well, I'll never make her sad. I got
In 1966, Paul Samwell-Smith left the band to pursue a career as a record producer. Chris Dreja switched to the bass, and Jimmy Page was brought in on second guitar. With Beck and Page playing dual lead guitar, the Yardbirds became potentially the greatest rock band in the world. Unfortunately, only 3 tracks were ever released by this lineup, but the band was captured by director Michelangelo Antonioni in his cult film Blow Up. This twin-lead guitar lineup was short-lived, and in late 1966, Jeff Beck left the Yardbirds to go solo, leaving the band as a 4-piece. Jimmy Page led the group into a heavier and more experimental sound, including his rendition of I'm Confused, better known today as Dazed and Confused. The Yardbirds launched the careers of 3 of rock's most celebrated guitarists and set the stage for the album-orientated hard rock of the 70s. This is their story.
The Rolling Stones had a crazy Italian, Russian Castro-looking character of a manager who spoke with a very thick accent called Giorgio Gomelsky. And when the Rolling Stones had their first record, Come On or something like that, and they went out to the giddy heights of doing a cinema tour, it left a big gap in the R&B club scene. And Giorgio Gomelsky liked what we were doing and immediately said, come and fill their shoes down in the Crawdaddy Club. And the rapport of the crowd encouraging us gave us, you know, great impetus to play louder, play faster, play looser. And within a short time, that crowd became our crowd.
I remember Eric Clapton wandering in one day with this Ivy League jacket, and of course was always a dandy, a precursor of fashion, right? Good old Eric. And other people, you know. And so we got to know the various things. And when the Stones were leaving, I thought, well, we must get another band in here, but this band has to be really different. There must be certain characteristics attached to this group that distinguish them from the Stones, because otherwise it would be horrible just to have a poor man's Rolling Stone. And the band that seemed the most likely to be able to succeed at this undertaking were the Yardbirds.
Well, this is the old Crawdaddy Club. Basically, they used to get about 200 or 300 people squashed in here. Well, these were the old girders that people used to hang on. They've boxed them in since, so you can't really hang on them anymore.
Although Eric was in the same college as we were, he was always a fairly shadowy figure. He went off early and did his own thing. And it was Keith who knew him better at that time and tracked him down. And when Eric came, he was like, he was already sort of a professional musician. He was the real thing. I mean, I remember Eric would literally practice a two-note phrase for a day. I mean, amazing. I mean, Eric would even practice holding the guitar.
Don't you hurry home. You made me walk from Chicago out to the Gulf.
Bands start as a result naturally when guys hang out. You get 3 or 4 musicians that like one another, what they do, then they hang out, then they become a band. To start a band on the drawing board is very inhuman and doesn't work. I mean, it may work for a couple of weeks, but as a business prospect, but it can't grow. It isn't an organic or a very human way to go about it.
The problem that we had when Giorgio finally got us a record deal was translating that exciting sound onto vinyl, which it did elude us for really quite a while. However, we went in to record a song called A Certain Girl, which I suppose was us thinking, this sounds, a commercial viability, and it's raunchy enough. And we spent a lot of time trying to make this work on record. But funnily enough, it was the B-side to that, a song called I Wish You Would, which was probably more what the Yardbirds were at that time.
wish you would. Tell me now, baby, what's wrong with you? You know I still love only you. Hugging and a kissing late at night. I tell you now, baby, I think that's right. Staying out all night long. I tell you now, baby, I think that's wrong. Come on now, baby, give me one more chance. You know I still love you, wanna give you romance. Come on now, baby, what's wrong with you? Trying to love me or some other man too. I love you, baby. Yes, I love you so.
I'm standing in the Ship in London's West End. This was the centre of the universe in the 60s for us Yardbirds when we played the Marquee in Wardour Street, getting quite drunk in between sets and de-sweating ourselves. It was during this period that the great Sonny Boy Williamson was brought over by the National Jazz Federation and Giorgio, and we became his backing band. We were English white kids, we'd never played with the real thing, only really heard it on record. And to play with this guy and go on and make an album with him was just an extraordinary, extraordinary experience.
That's straight 820. We're gonna get on the highway.
The people in the band, I mean Jim, Keith, myself, I think started to, have many ideas about arrangements and areas of music that we wanted to pursue. And when Ronnie Beck, the music publisher, came along with the song For Your Love, we felt that was a really great song that we could interpret the way we felt. And, there was a magic about recording that song. I mean, there was an air in the studio of excitement from the word go. I mean, it just felt absolutely right.
Well, Eric had other ideas for the band. I think he wanted us to do more R&B type covers that, in my opinion, weren't really going to work so well as singles. The idea of doing For Your Love, I don't think he really liked so much. Also, I don't think it really featured him. It was a big step for the band, and unfortunately, he didn't really go with it.
Eric played on the studio session for Your Love, and then virtually immediately left. Well, we had this massive record suddenly, and we had no lead guitar player, which is an interesting position to be in. We had to fill that position very, very quickly.
And it was thought that maybe we could get Jimmy Page, because Jimmy Page was like the hottest session man in those days. And Giorgio knew Jimmy, and he asked Jimmy if he'd join the band. But at the time, Jimmy was so busy doing sessions, he said, well, he wasn't really into joining a live band. He said, well, why don't you try one of my understudies, a guy called Jeff Beck. So I went down to see Jeff and asked him if he'd join the band. Of course, he was delighted.
The invitation to join the Yardbirds came after I finished a sweaty set at the 100 Club. And that time we were playing Eel Pie Island and all that, and getting quite a good reputation. I jumped off stage and this arm came around me. There was a bearded gentleman by the name of Hamish Grimes, and he said, "Can I swear?" He said, "You're going to be in a top fucking band this week." And I went, "Oh, great. Who are you? This is it. You can't get much better than this." I was really hurt about that he didn't make any reference to the fact that we just stormed the place, But he thought, well, everybody would want to join the Yardbirds, without even batting an eyelid. And he was right, because I joined.
Break it
think he is the most unique guitar player, and the most, probably the most devoted. I mean, from what I know of Jeff, you know, he's either fixing his cars or playing the guitar. There's no in between for him, and he actually is never changed. And I mean, unlike myself, who's been kind of wandering around a lot of the time, dabbling in this and that and being led astray, Jeff has been very consistent, you know.
I remember Keith Relf saying, let me hear you play the blues at the audition. I went, I played about 3 or 4 Matt Murphy lines, and he said, great, that'll do. I didn't outline much at that stage. It was like, get him in, let him learn the songs. Eric used to do this, Eric used to do that, and I thought, yeah, got to do that for the time being, because those were the crowd-pleasing things, the build-ups, the power chords. You know, so it didn't make sense to try and argue against that. But the best was round the corner, you know. I heard what a record, Booker T and the MG's Green Onions, and I just went straight out of my head when I heard that. That's what I want to play, that kind of stuff. Because it was like a stepping stone. Like every day, you know, in those days it was like, oh, that's out, you can't do that anymore, can't do Chuck Berry stuff. And I got lessons from that, you know, from Booker T's Mob, and then the Stax thing started, Motown, all that real music, you know, real good pop music. That had some substance to it, and I dialed into that, and that's where I picked up all the chord things that I subsequently used on a lot of my stuff. Influenced by that, by the black Motown and Stax people. Just this kind of block sound they used to get, like Little Richard. It has never been achieved since. You couldn't get it if you tried. You don't get people with voices like Little Richard for a start, but it's not just that, it's the locked up sound they had in the band that gave it that sound. Same with Jerry Lee and Vincent and all the rest of them.
The incredible thing about Jeff is that his roots also were the blues and rock and roll, but also he was much wider in his musical tastes. And he also had a mind and a talent that wanted to go much, further than just playing rock and roll or blues licks. And it was perfect for us because we were about to enter a phase of all sorts of experimentation. I mean, in retrospect, we obviously put Jeff through an awful lot of pressure. We used to work on material, then bring Jeff in and explain to him, like, for instance, the sitar sound that he created for Heart Full of Soul. Georgia had originally booked an Indian sitar player, I think from the local Indian restaurant, and a tabla player, and we tried to create this sound at the front end of Heart Full of Soul. But of course, it just sounded very thin and weedy, and there was no way. I mean, it sounded like a very bad cut. So we said to Jeff, what can you do? And Jeff came in and created, this incredible sound.
Sort of threads of songs coming in from different writers. Jim and Paul used to write stuff, and I just chimed in with my ideas of riffs and just stuff like that. And
it's difficult with songwriting to know if you try and apportion it exactly. It is difficult, and very often it's just a combined effort. Although in this case, Still I'm Sad was definitely just Jim and me. I mean, we definitely turned up with it, but of course the rest of them playing it and contributed something to it.
See the stars come falling down from the sky, gently passing, they kiss your tears when you cry. See the wind come softly blow your hair from your face. See the rain hide away in this gray. Still I'm sad.
I had the Vox people bring down the biggest amps that had ever been built. I think with 4 of them. Big chrome stands, and it was like ridiculous. I mean, people were talking about volume that was coming out of this little AC30, and they did kick it out. But these things look like a factory, like some block of flats on stage. And but they didn't sound very good. They must have thrown the sound, but on stage I felt more happy with the smaller amps. But it was the first feeling I ever got of, this is big stuff. We're now in the big league and you're going to get it in a big way. And I think we all felt that and we rose to the occasion. Everybody played amazingly well.
Shindig goes to London.
We got total hysteria of people screaming and going berserk. And I wouldn't mind seeing that film. Not to listen to the music so much, but just, you know, just get the vibe of it. I mean, the sound was probably appalling, but we're having a ball up there.
Of course, going to the States was a huge thing for us because at the time people didn't go to America. We just saw America on TV and American films, and going there at the time was so exciting for us, especially going to LA and California. In fact, the first time we went there, we didn't have a work permit. Instead of playing the gigs that we had scheduled to play, I think we only did one, and then we got in trouble with the Musicians Union and ended up just playing parties for publicity's sake. But then we got into doing quite regular tours, and we were adopted by the American audience who loved our music. In fact, we became bigger in the States than in England.
She was a pretty, from New York City. Wanna be something let her go with him. Oh, just come out, go out, get along. Sweet little woman, get along. Happy young home way, get along. Sweet little woman, get along. Happy young home way with him. Oh, just come out, go out, now, now.
Yeah, I opened my eyes. I mean, I lived in a shithole, you know, in Clapham somewhere. It's really awful. I knew I'd get out of it, but it's just one of those stepping stones you have to go. And when I saw how they lived out there, I mean, there were blonde girls driving around in expensive sports cars and, you know, 18, 17 years old. Stuff that you would never get in a million years over here. And they had it. It was the land of milk and honey out there. And smog. It was great.
Well, it was one of Giorgio's many varied ideas to take us one day into Sun Studios in Memphis. And I remember going in, I remember it was absolutely pouring with rain that night. And we were all really excited, and we went in and met Sam Phillips, and we recorded Train Kept a Rolling and Mr. You're a Better Man Than I. And Sam seemed quite impressed. He was the engineer at the time. And he said, well, yeah, it's a good band. He said, I like the guitar player and the bass player. He said, the drummer's okay when he gets a bit relaxed. Well, I think you're going to have to sort your singer out. So, you know, we said, oh, what's going on? We realised that Keith had had a few drinks, you know, and he was a bit of the worse for a few pints. So we had to obviously overdub the vocals at another time. So we did Mr. You're a Better Man Than I there, which became the B-side for Shapes of Things.
Yeah, within my lonely frame, my eyes just hurting my brain, but will it seem the same? 'Cause tomorrow will I be older? 'Cause tomorrow may be a soldier? 'Cause tomorrow may I be bolder than today? That I will find thoughts deep within my mind that won't disgrace my kind. Holding to your passing hands, please don't destroy these lands, don't make them desert sand. Come tomorrow, will I be older? Come tomorrow.
So when we came to Over, Under, Sideways, Down, Jeff actually played the bass, I played the drums, and then we came up with the tune and came up with the words. And we just got a new manager, actually, Simon Napier Bell, and he actually suggested Over, Under, Sideways, Down.
We learned a lot about recording with Roger Cameron at Advision. So we worked from Monday through till Friday, about 8 hours, 10 hours a day. Good. But I didn't like playing live. I didn't enjoy the endless travel. And then if you did have a day off, they'd make you go into do a photo session. So it was getting tiring, and there was no space to do anything interesting, like spend time in the studio and get more creative that way.
We were really up shit creek without Paul. We needed that bass. I mean, it was quite clear that we were going to need that, you know, on Smokestack, which was a crowd pleaser. So I thought, well, if we both play guitar, it'll be quite amazing, you know, to have this kind of like tandem thing going on, you know, crazy one side and crazy the other. Who cares about, you know, Paul not being there?
Jeff and I had spoken before about actually how good it would be if the two of us were in the same band, you know, in the Yardbirds. And at the time it didn't seem possible because it was known as 5 Live Yardbirds, and it couldn't possibly be 6. And then suddenly I was there when the whole band, you know, like one of the guys decided to leave the bass player. And I started on the bass just to help them out, and then we got into the dual lead guitars, and it was fantastic, really, really good.
Antonioni, it was a pompous oaf. I didn't like him at all. Everyone was calling him Sir, and I couldn't understand why. And the film was a bit of a joke anyway. I mean, it was all based on his vision of London, which was a bit of Hemmings. I mean, Hemmings was supposed to be Bailey, and we were supposed to be The Who. Why didn't he use those people and make a proper documentary instead of this crackpot sort of joke, you know?
Blow Up went on to become, you know, a film that epitomised apparently this sort of, you know, swinging London scenario, you know. Again, it was the Yardbirds finding themselves in this space and, you know, just doing it.
The film was a bit of a joke. Crap. I mean, but people loved it. It kept us going. You know, I thought, oh, that's the end of us, because I saw the premiere of it in Los Angeles, and we were there, and it was great, you know, for a while. But I didn't like my territory being encroached upon. I wanted to be it, you know. I wanted to do all the guitar work. And when it got to the point where we were exhausted, we embarked upon I think the Dick Clark tour. That was it. I mean, 6 weeks. 6 hours in that thing was enough for me. And to be faced with that kind of travel problem and emotional tear-ups and stuff, and then at the end of that, play a toilet gig with music you didn't really feel comfortable with. It was a recipe for disaster. Things just got on top of me and I cracked up, you know, basically. I wanted to do something other than travel. I don't care what it was, just get it out of my hair, you know, all that travelling, and start and think about what I want to do. So it's not important as to whether I was chucked out or left or whatever, it just happened.
When Jeff left, and we carried on, well, the pure nature of the band, they had numbers that, you know, you could really stretch out in. And during the time that I was in there, it's just the guitar, then it was a...
Second manager, he came out of the blue to see me one day and said sort of, look, I'm really fed up with managing the Yardbirds, and would I manage them? Obviously I was very interested, and I arranged to meet them. And Simon said a wonderful thing to me. He said to me, Peter, he said, there's only one big problem with the band. There's a guy and he's a real smart ass, a real wise guy. I said, oh really? I said, who's that? He said, Jimmy Page. So I said, oh, I see. And I sort of, I thought, he must know I know Jimmy since 1962, 63, you know, apart from Neil Christian and the other things he did. You know, when I was in business with Mickey Most, he did all the Hermits things, the Donovan things, and, you know, so many sessions, he did all Mickey's sessions. So when I met with the Yardbirds, I said to Jimmy, I hear you're a troublemaker and a pain, I've got to get rid of you. What have you been up to? And he said, well, we did the Anatoni's Blow Up, and we did a 4-week tour in England with the Rolling Stones and Tina Turner, as it was then, and an American tour. We got £112 each. And that was really why he was the only one that had either the balls or the savvy to stand up and say, this is not good enough. Mickey Most by then was recording them. Mickey is a pop producer, very, very good, or was at that time, an excellent pop producer. And there was always that bit of friction there. The way I saw the band going, the way they wanted to go or continue on, as against the pop thing.
I was just hired as a producer, and I tried to make a commercial enough sound to get them in the charts. That didn't succeed. Made a couple of records, and unfortunately they weren't the kind of records that people buy records wanted. But that was the intention, was to try to resuscitate their career, really.
And we found it very limiting to stick on to have to think of hit singles all the time. And we weren't aware, actually, that the market was changing into an album market. I mean, it seemed to be very just, all of a sudden, just before we broke up. And now we were a bit fed up with working on singles all the time, and we felt that, maybe an up-to-date Roger the engineer would have worked a lot better for us. At that time, I mean, we'd all wear caftans, and some of us would have had permed hairstyles. And Keith and I, we used to share a room quite often, and we'd take candles in, maybe have a few smokes and get into the old psychedelic piece, brother. The thing about Keith and I was that we were so tired of travelling around. We were playing the same numbers. We may be playing some version of Smokestack Lightning still then, after 5 or 6 years or whatever. We've been playing that all the time. And we couldn't really see any future for it. And Jimmy had been in the band maybe a year or two. And we'd had it. And Jimmy was fresh, and, all those guys that he found in the Zeppelin, they were all raring to go.
And when the band finally folded and they wanted to try something new, and I just really wanted to carry on rocking, I had this great, stockpile of, material in my mind, and sort of songs and riffs that I'd got written down on tape at the time. So it was really handy, yeah. I knew what way I wanted the group to go as well, if I could get a group together. Fortunately, I did.
Lots of people talking, few of them know.
His son found him lying on the living room floor with his headphones still on. He thought he was just asleep because he'd often worked through the night, It was very sad. I think the thing about Keith that I always think is, hearing it in retrospect, how amazingly good his harmonica playing was.
His pop career was a bit kind of had a problem. He couldn't reach the certain type of style that was needed for a pop song. He couldn't embrace that, but for wild blues he could do it, somehow, like Smokestack. It didn't matter about this sort of intonation, he would just scream it, and it would all happen.
Hey, pretty women standing around, make love to you, baby. One else sound, I'm a man, I spill him. Hey, man, right.
Remember the May Ball, the Oxford May
Yes.
Ball?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the end of the road.
Curtains there, didn't he?
Jimmy Page actually came to that gig.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was there.
He came there to see the band, and I told him that things were not running very smoothly. And there was all this, hello, yeah, kind of Princess Di types all around. They were.
Oh, they
there was
were.
like trays of drinks and, proper stuff with sticks and everything. And then we started this... And then Keith went, cut the train, smack. Fell straight over backwards into Jim's drums.
Yeah.
And Mama Cass came, right?
Mama Cass
and the Horace
Cass
was
there.
Yeah. And when we were in the tent afterwards, sort of drinking our troubles away, I said, look, Jim, I'm really sorry about this. I expect you don't want to know, about joining the band now. He goes, it was the best thing ever. Can't tell you. When Keith fell over backwards, oh, fantastic. It wasn't going to put him off that easily.
the moon if it were mine to give.
I tell you what, it was really great to be, you know, to be young, to travel the world at that time, to blow the establishment out of your brain, you know. It was just marvellous.
I suppose we were the pioneers of that heavy metal thing and the psychedelia, because there was nothing like it. I mean, people say that, you know, like Elvis, there was nothing like him, but there was nothing like the Yardbirds. Absolutely. Complete nuts. You know, using the heavy 12-bar blues sequences, spacing them out with wild, you know, monotonal kind of chord pounding. And without any real sort of pyrotechnics or anything, just the sweat and the guts that we put into it.